zipped his pants and he pulled out his and he didn't say anything to me.
A female federal warden who was pregnant while on duty, Sean Combs, popularly known as Diddy, was the lone prisoner in the solitary confinement section. There was no incident report, no video was captured, and no one voiced their concerns yet. This morning, the first complaint seems that she didn't write an anonymous letter or employ a lawyer, brought a crumpled piece of handwritten paper with only one starting sentence into the supervisor's office. Since it was only the two of us and there, he knew I wouldn't dare speak. On that particular night, the security camera in hallway C went black for 17 minutes. The final night shift, she had agreed to work, and the instant all monitoring information abruptly disappeared from the central system. She is now pregnant. But no one has verified what happened behind the isolated unit's door. According to a medical study, that night coincides exactly with the day of conception. The question is how someone in jail may violate an institution designed to preserve moral standards, not what is right or wrong, the law into a means of hiding a crime. And if this was indeed the case, then it was permitted to occur part 1 at 4:36 a.m. on June 4th in Atlanta. Not for the first time. The Emergency Investigation Unit is located within the Digital Archive, room on the second level of the federal prison facility. It's looking over solitary confinement block C's whole camera log after a startling internal complaint. A 14-week pregnant female warden asserts the only person in that location at the time of the occurrence was a prisoner, and she was compelled while on duty. Diddy, whose real name is Sean Combs, worked the shift on the evening of March 13th. The hallway camera in block code. Based on security coordination data, the signal for CA-17 was lost at precisely 10:14 p.m. for 17 minutes. The status light was out, and there were no internal notifications, requests for technical assistance, and the absence of incident reports following the changeover. The history of electronic door entry noted one entry at 10:11 p.m. by Warden TD, who was also the one who submitted the complaint. She was the only one in the remote hallway during the blackout time, and no more unlocks happened after that. When the system was restored at 10:31 p.m., prisoner Diddy's first picture showed the emergency light blinking, indicating that someone had interfered with the power supply in the hallway. This was not recorded in the maintenance plan. A hurriedly generated report on the system inspection was submitted the next day and signed by the designated technician. Claims that the problem is a rapid voltage drop with an unknown source. However, there is no proof of. About 6 weeks later, the IT crew was sent to the location that evening. Warden TD was brought to the prison center's medical room on April 27th in a state of following persistent exhaustion and morning sickness. The test revealed a positive pregnancy result at 14 weeks, corresponds precisely with the evening when the hallway C camera was turned off. Since then, TD has been off duty without explanation. 4 days later, a transfer request was made without a comment. And on the morning of June 4th, the Security Operations Department received a 2-page handwritten paper. She claimed to have been persuaded, and she detailed how the camera was turned off and the walkie-talkie signal was blocked. She was unable to leave when the hallway's lighting went into backup mode, and nobody answered the emergency call system. And when she eventually got out, the prisoner threatened to give her a single term. Who will believe him? According to your internal data, from March 1st to June 1st, there were 3 unusual camera system interruptions in Lonely Block C, all of which took place between 9:30 and 11 p.m. 2 more female warden shifts coincided with the occurrences. One has since resigned. The other is on a long leave of absence without explanation. There have been no unusual reports were filed in relation to any of those incidents. However, an internal document that was released claims that one of the 2 women was previously threatened verbally by Diddy as he was delivering food. The situation was settled with a verbal notice, and no formal documentation was submitted. The most important question at this time is not only what took place on the evening of March 13th, but who made it possible? Why was the whole shift left without cross-monitoring in accordance with policy if there was no backup recording? In fact, the camera was manually turned off by someone with the power to do so. Investigators were informed by a security specialist that a second story is required in order to disable camera CA17 internal control system code ZN6 clearance access. And the directive has to be carried out straight from the main electrical panel. As remote operation is not feasible, someone had to unlock the control room, carry out the manual procedure, and then go. There is no record of access at that period in the control room door log. Therefore, if that access was removed or if someone has invisible access rights, who is it? Shielding such weaknesses from examination on June 5th, a folded sheet in the administrative zone. A handwritten, unsigned document was discovered behind the door of the women's break room. Fingerprints. The sole sentence was, "If you dare open your mouth." No inquiry was started by prison officials. There were no warnings sent to other employees, and the complaint received no safeguards. Remaining silent, Diddy is still in Block C and has not been moved. He has not responded to any questions while in strict isolation, and his lawyer refused to comment. Nobody is aware that the woman who made the complaint is still pregnant and has not gone back to work. Where she is, why does this system do this if it was intended to prevent repeat offenses? Control everything internally. And if this were indeed the first instance, why was this not the first time that there were comparable warning indications, and those in power kept quiet? But this won't be the last part. Part 2. The letter beneath. The June 5th, 7:23 a.m., caretaker is working in a folded piece of paper was found stuffed deep in the ground level, the administrative portion of the federal prison facility, underneath the doorframe of the room that was formerly designated for Warden B107TD prior to her abrupt removal from the duty roster. The document revealed no signature was found on the sealed signs, which were written in black marker with clearly new ink. The only phrase on it said, "If you dare open your mouth, you won't be giving birth." The area where it was discovered is monitored by a wide-angle camera with the designation ABT2. However, technical reports submitted that same day claimed that there had been a recording issue with the camera, beginning over 4 hours before the message was found. At 3:14 a.m., the system failed to identify the fault until 9:12 a.m., when it was orally reported to the technical department. All efforts to determine who handed the message were unsuccessful, due to the loss of video during such a crucial period. Worthless since no one knows who handled the message, where it came from, or what its actual purpose was. An analysis carried out by the federal investigating team, which revealed the message precisely 1 day after the first complaint, was, "It is a blatant sign of revenge." Considering that the victim is expecting a child and has not been observed in the administrative region since this episode, which is now considered to be the second act in a string of concerning events since the case started, the Internal Security Unit issued a warning. No protection team was assigned to keep an eye on people engaged. There were no notifications, and surveillance did not intensify. The head of security only noted one sentence in the internal report dated June 6th. The finding that there is no increased risk of further damage was signed and sent to the Oversight Center without passing through additional evaluation or peer review. Access log data from the smart door system in the area around room B107 during the period from 11 p.m. on June 4th to June 5th displayed 5 card swipes, 4 of which came from cleaning personnel. The last entry, made at 3:21 a.m., was associated with an unnamed access card that was normally identifiable by a gray code. Sent to external inspection units or temporary IT teams without a username was attached. No trace protocol was enabled by 10 hours that same day, and no cross-reference data was provided. The Federal Investigative Unit released a preliminary report once the access code was fully deleted from the central data system. Discovering that the internal system seems to have been altered, maybe by a high-level employee. The unapproved, a now familiar pattern of camera failures coincided with the access and subsequent erasure of data. This is the third such event in fewer than 90 days, all of which occur in areas associated with women victims. That same day, around 3:00 p.m., a private meeting was held and the representatives from the FBI jail were present in the administrative wing's fourth floor meeting room. One comment was recorded in the meeting minutes by management and the Personnel Supervision Unit. There is currently no official evidence to support the idea that prisoner Diddy was personally engaged in the message published thus far. However, a source with knowledge of Warden TDs at precisely 10 a.m. She was moved to an off-site safe home beyond the detention center's control grid with her medical records. 3 hours after the message was discovered on June 5th, the file's claimed rationale was withdrawal of protection because of abnormal psychological stress. But no unit has taken ownership of the transfer. No documentation attests to her whereabouts. No witness protection procedure was started. There is just one her name was, and the internal transfer code was tagged urgent without any justification. Eliminated immediately from all internal rosters. Was this really a preventive measure? Action? Or was it a tactic to covertly marginalize someone who had upset the equilibrium of an otherwise regulated system? If she is no longer there, it is no longer there. And no one has lost the voice to seek justice for her charge. And as of June 6th, there is no legal Diddy had not been the subject of any further inquiry. Isolation orders, equipment access, or other measures. Suspension of lawyer communications, everything in solitary Block C went on as usual. With the exception of the worry that a shift without a camera and a single door to unlock may cause a female warden to disappear after just one note. What happened to the other people that used to work overnight in that area? Who submitted a leave request without providing an explanation? The people who observed but did not. Communicate the message is not mentioned by anybody, yet everyone knows it happened, and if it's accurate, then the following step won't be a warning. Part 3. Punishment. The individual is removed from the system at 9:02 a.m. on June 6th. The Atlanta Federal Reserve's Internal Personnel Database. The weekly roster of the detention center was changed under the Special Personnel Code Adjustment. Category. The name of the administrative order identified Warden TD as deleted from the system. No decision number was noted, and no particular her personal contact information was removed for the given reason. The modification log showed that information vanished from the internal network precisely 36 hours after she lodged her complaint, was carried out from a device with the ID DCA1 on the system's highest access level server. Situated on the 4th level of the Security Administration Wing in the coordination office there are just 2 people who have the power to remove employees. At that level from the system, the head of Federal Human Resources and the prison center's deputy director. There is no proof as to who started the activity without requesting independent confirmation. No medical file or internal inquiry order was included with the removal of Warden TDS name. Protected reassignment or recovery at 11:20 a.m. A printed copy of the to prepare for the upcoming week's agenda. A personnel deployment chart was created under the area designated the code MNR. Abbreviation for mentally alert was written next to the internal alert TDS name. Non-responsive. This classification is a specific category used for situations in which workers who have experienced serious trauma at work are either placed in prolonged psychological isolation or are considered unable to work due to extraordinary circumstances. No administrative division official verified that she vanished with no address or channel. And the health department's records include no label or associated medical instruction of contact without a safety report And from that point on, her whole email, fingerprint access, and authentication devices were removed from the internal communication profile. The system, a backup copy of the system, shows that no restoration requests were made. Her handwritten letter is presently being stored in the basement archive in the area dedicated to the complaint file log. Unprocessed evidence with labels and technical documents pertaining to the 3 previous instances of camera signal loss. But this archive part there is no processing deadline. And no employee has been under the supervision of any internal auditing unit assigned to go over its contents. At 2:15 p.m. the same day, Diddy was given the opportunity to confer privately with his lawyer in the remote bottom floor council chamber, lasted for 49 minutes. In accordance with the temporary detention center guidelines, detainees unsupervised. Private encounters are not allowed for internal investigations. Although the visitor record did not indicate an overseeing officer, the camera in the council room was operating correctly. But the meeting's video was marked as having limited access and an emergency code. M7, only accessible or extractable with high-level clearance. No one has formally verified a relationship between these two occurrences, although inquiries started within internal circles to disseminate the information on why a complaint was deleted from the system just 36 hours after filing, why the protection process wasn't triggered, and whether she was really placed. Why was she temporarily protected and no one in the institution knew where she was or if she was still there? Although her abduction was never made public, word of it quietly cautioned employees who spent the previous 3 months working in solitary Block C started making unannounced requests for shift changes, leave requests, or sick calls. 3 in March, technicians asked to be released from their nighttime shift as Block CA surveillance employees. No one in the control room brought up TD when the 13th shift submitted a transfer request to another state that same week. However, the newly printed duty schedule no longer displayed any open slots for the Thursday morning meeting, night shift in hallway C, but instead it identified a male warden who had just started working there. Facility, and there isn't a record of an internal referral. When someone is removed from the system, no medical records remain to demonstrate their involvement. No formal complaint, no alarms were sent off, only whatever the individual attempted to leave behind, assuming anything survived, and if someone ventured to speak up, the system could do that to them. What is preventing it from doing the same to whoever shows up next? Part 4 of the meeting will take place at 2:15 p.m. on June 6th without a recording. Atlanta Federal Detention Center, ground level, isolated legal consulting room, Shaw, Combs. An inmate with custody ID CBX 143 was led into Conference Room 3 in response to a request from his private legal counsel. Meeting length, 49 minutes. The case file makes it clear that there would be no third-party contact and that the consultation will be confidential. Has no reference memo from the warden, no name of the supervisory officer, and no the fixed surveillance camera with the personnel badge signature verifying duty assignment. The internal signal system, which is situated in the top right corner of Conference Room 3, continued to function normally. Operational state, nonetheless, the same day at 7:47 p.m. when the security coordination team tried to obtain the video for cross-checking. The whole 2:10 to 3:05 p.m. video data was identified as inaccessible. The documented cause of the Access Restriction Emergency Code, M7 code. M7 is only used when dealing with people who fall under national. No one has a special security designation or federal investigations involving several agencies under seal. Verified the person who allocated this code to the meeting. All trace logs from the second floor coordination center were stopped by a security command wall at the interior level. No one in the detention facility is in charge of permission to assign an M7 code without requiring credentials for external authorization. When asked if any papers had been obtained, Diddy's attorney declined to reveal the details of the meeting. After the conversation, the person was moved outside and only said, "That information is protected, legally protected by attorney-client privilege." Nevertheless, a temporary maintenance technician assigned to Thea portable recording device was found below the administrative wing that was assigned to recheck the audio system. The consultation desk was concealed under a chair's bottom dock compartment when the batteries were taken out. No intake records, no seal log. And not included in the facility's issued inventory, the recording device was turned over to internal security rather than being sent to the storage archive. The division is a special oversight body that answers directly to the deputy director of the correctional facility. Furthermore, there was no image proof of the item, no intake record, and no analytical report was submitted that day. At 3:12 p.m. following the meeting, Diddy was led back to his isolated cell by internal route C4, a route that avoids the regions where baggage is inspected. The moving order was identified by the Accelerated Protocol Code, CS3. Only prisoners who exhibit psychological instability or who need little exposure to the outside world are eligible for this designation. However, there is no indication throughout the whole medical procedures log that Diddy was ever evaluated psychologically. 3 temporary technical staff workers were moved at 5:30 p.m. that night because they were not feeling well. One of the 3, an encryption system engineer, subsequently submitted a report out of Block C under the reason system upgrade. Request to leave all of the remaining night shifts for the week, citing operational strain as the primary cause. Threshold: no physician's evaluation was attached, no health certificate was given. And the inquiry is not what was the true question, is who issued the directive that no one should speak in that room. Ever heard what was said? Why was code M7 used, and why was the video data restricted? Related to a legal consultation about a prisoner who is the subject of an internal inquiry. And why on the same the accused was transferred without being inspected, and the complainant was removed from the system on that day, has asserted official accountability, yet someone decided that this meeting ought to be safeguarded. Others who are left voiceless and without proof if every danger is conducted in silence. Then this technology has perfectly performed its purpose. One individual deleted one meeting that wasn't recorded. Part 5. A convict who appears to have never been fully imprisoned yet is still present in the unstamped file. Basement Archive Section, 10:26 a.m., June 7th, Compartment 4B for unprocessed material. During a further examination of the surveillance files in Hallway C, an inspector found a bundle of documents without an archive code carrying the information that the federal investigating team had sought, connected to no official note and without an administrative stamp. The front cover was the package, had 17 documents, and was marked Urgent Proposal for Internal Use Only, printed from the facility's internal system. However, the date of publication was not specified. The title appeared on the first page. Risk Assessment Suggestion for Treating Prisoners CBX-3 in Isolation throughout the text. The word isolated was used 9 times, frequently in conjunction with terms like reduced access, elimination of staff contact details, and preserving a low level of communication, visibility. No signatures were found. Approval marks without an issue date. Yet the document fully complied with the style guidelines utilized in the interior organization of the federal penitentiary. A very noteworthy portion on page 6 read, "It is advised that in situations when the person is irritated or disrupts the internal environment, prioritize low-conflict workers in order to decrease direct staff interaction, restrict the file's exposure to other layers, and minimize reporting of unimportant details." This sentence was manually marked in red ink with a handwritten query next to it asking who gave the order. It stays unknown to whom such a message was added. The Federal Investigative Unit promptly requested aid to determine the provenance of the paper. The whole basement archive was locked down for 48 hours. However, the Internal Security Agency lifted the lockout at 1:55 p.m. that same day. security management units stating that there was no proof of falsified official records. The whole collection of files was returned to the archive. But by day's end, the bundle in question had disappeared since it had never been cataloged. No digital backup had been taken out of compartment for B, and nobody knew who had put the document there. But nobody remembered signing it, and there was no staff list. Included everyone who had been given access to Section 4B within the previous 72 hours. The question was now how long the system had been hiding something, assuming the document was, rather than if it was hiding anything at all. If it was authentic, why did it precisely match the internal formatting if it was fake? As no one assumed accountability for a proposal that calls for less contact, decreased detail, tracking, and reporting. Only one line showed on the last page. To prevent a cascade of events, the Warden TD problem should be resolved quickly. Repercussions: although there was no authorship, authentication, or signature, it was noted. At 4:20 p.m., her name appeared for the first time in any document with operational intent, even if it was just in a footnote. The basement level was removed from the internal audit team's reach, and the inspection was closed permanently with no planned reassessment. The sole reference to the unstamped bundle in the end-of-day summary report was origin. Unverified evidence is not admissible. However, for those who are still within the institution, every evening, individuals who continue to work the night shift go down the C-block corridor. The very existence of such, even for a few hours, a paper was proof enough that someone had anticipated what would happen. Perhaps not. Although no one ever signed their name, the system had already started carrying out all of its instructions. And if such directions are considered inadmissible as evidence, what precisely would be sufficient in Section 6? Final 17 minutes. Technical Center 2nd, June 8th, 3 a.m. floor. Atlanta Federal Detention Center, IDA. A coordinating unit for security engineers. Finished the raw data recovery procedure from an external auxiliary drive that was previously attached to the hallway C camera system on the evening of March 13th. The video that was recovered was not part of the primary logging system and did not show up on any administrative interface. The retrieved video lasts for 17 minutes and 6 seconds, which precisely corresponded to the window when the camera was declared inaccessible. The recovered film looked like a poor-quality backup tape, with only flickering, hazy images instead of sounds. The section of the corridor just in front of the door of Loan Unit C was shown at an off-axis and distorted angle. In the 3rd minute, a female police officer working a regular night shift emerged in the lower left corner of the image. Uniform, she approached the only cell door that had a functional light and stopped, gazed about before vanishing from the picture for almost 38 seconds. A door opened from a blind area when the hallway lights decreased in the 5th minute. A spot behind the camera that isn't seen on any public internal diagram, a guy emerged from his face as the door opened, revealing a dim crimson glow from inside. Invisible in a gray shirt devoid of logos, he strode towards the camera and gestured with his hand before the screen suddenly went blank. That frame marked the conclusion of the video. Format analysis showed that the clip was not from the primary surveillance stream, but instead from a mirrored feed that is only utilized for signal diagnostics or maintenance. Per official policy, although this feed should never be recorded, it did happen during a camera CA17 firmware test. 3 months earlier, a technician had activated a feature known as shadow capture, which automatically backs data to a backup device in case of an unexpected disconnect. Nevertheless, that backup device was not mentioned in any equipment inventory. It was found within a lockable drawer in the section dedicated to storing spare components. Had not undergone inspection for 5 weeks. A temporary technician employed by the Federal Tech Division, no one knew why he had been told to check that drawer. When the video was shown later that day in the high-level briefing room, the gadget was still operational. And nobody stated that after the meeting. No directions were given. And at 6:14 a.m., the storage device was sealed and taken to the federal office the next morning. It's paperwork. That was attached to read Verified Archive Evidence Classification Pending. Nobody was involved in verifying that Diddy was the individual in the video. But no one explained who unlocked the cell door, or if after 38 seconds the female officer came back, but no paper was ever described. Red light appears to be emanating from a location that is not officially shown on the internal facility map. The final this query was included in the official minutes of the June 9th morning meeting. If the camera was completely deactivated, there was no response to the questions of how a mirrored feed was created or who was aware of the device before it was discovered. There was just a handwritten remark at the bottom of the file scrawling in red ink. Was there a technical error, or did someone purposefully leave evidence behind? The final 17 minutes, which were assumed to be deleted, turned out to be the sole evidence that anything ever happened. Nobody has yet dared to tell what that something was allowed, because if someone, perhaps this wasn't a leak, if you were aware that the video existed but chose to leave it in place. Perhaps 6:45 a.m. was a warning. June 10th, the whole event reporting system in the central monitoring room on paper. The Atlanta Federal Detention Center changed to a single status stable. There were still infractions that needed more investigation, but there wasn't enough proof in the complaint against the female warden. The 17-minute film was categorized as identity theft in order to access a criminal file. Unverified, the side door that was seen in the video was not on the inside digital blueprint. Thus, it didn't exist. All of the questions ultimately clashed. With a wall of denial and purposeful quiet, Diddy is still behind bars. Listed as high-control inmates, they continue to get separate medical reports and are entitled to weekly legal advice. There is not a single line in the documents stating that he was present for 42 hours at one point. Of a warden who is pregnant and hasn't been in the system since June 6th. She disappeared from her administrative office and has not been located or contacted. Unit from the personnel backup files of the Department of Defense, the staffing list, and the shift schedule, but the people who remained behind were still working the night shift, sweeping Block C and passing that cell every day. They don't talk about it, but they remember and remind each other. They recall the rubber spirits that ceased at that time, as well as the faint light that never went out that night. Vanished. They recall the hallway, where the signal abruptly stopped the tracks of a person whose name is no longer in the system. None of them were questioned or cited because first-hand accounts are not admissible as proof. Not loud enough. Similar to an extra-free pregnant discomfort without Diddy was never tried for this event. And no one was ever prosecuted. It was moved, and no special committee, hearings, or press inquiry took place. Why is he still there when no one outside of us is aware of what actually transpired or what was never permitted to be written? She is not. Then why can someone who has been accused of abuse ask to have the cameras turned? Often have that request granted. But why was an unconfirmed video shut as soon as it was found? How can a person, witness, or victim disappear from the system as though she had never been there? Nobody responded. Disputed, the file was never reopened, and there is still just one question that refuses to vanish. What is the system protecting? If this is the reality. Furthermore, if this is a fraud, then who is able to fabricate such a flawless,